All right. Well, welcome into today's GSD work group meeting. So starting with the developer position that we're hiring for, um, let me copy the link into chat for folks if you're not already looking at the agenda. Um, so long story short, there is we're looking to get additional resources to build out the actual backend and human interface aspects of the project, just to hopefully get that closer to being a critical mass so that people can start using it proactively. So if you or anyone that you know would be interested, please feel free to send that their way. And we're also going to be blasting out on various social media channels to hopefully find people that are interested in open source and wanting to work on the project part-time. So um, as for the interface, so I have a couple of updates there, um, which I believe I have a pull request open for. Let me see if I can pull that up really quick. But where we're at with that is based on some of Kurt's feedback. We have now, actually, yeah, let me go ahead and just spin up my dev server really quick for this. So just the web. I will go ahead and share my screen here. I guess I'll do that once I get the server going. So yarn dev.
All right, while we wait, can I ask Dean, what is your background? That looks really cool, whatever it is.
Uh, Short answer is I don't remember. I saw this factory floor thing and it fit. I have a couple lights in my studio, so it fit right. But that light right there cures the stuff that's in that pit right there, and then there's electric that goes around it. So I don't know what's in there. I just thought it was really cool, so I liked it. Because you always, yeah, because I have a little light that comes in on this side, so I always need a little bit of extra light. Anyway.
Sure, that's awesome.
All right.
Can I ask about this position? What's the like rough target pay rate? Because I think I know somebody that I could turn on to this.
Okay. Um, so this isn't written in stone or gospel or anything, so little grain
Sure.
of salt there. I think we were talking about 50 to 80,000.
Yeah, I think I got somebody smart enough to do this well.
Yeah, I
I'll,
mean, the
I'll,
one nice
I'll,
thing is it's flexible on the time. It's, working on something kind of interesting and cool. It'll be public, which, kind of helps with because, yeah, we can't pay like six figures.
Mhm. But yeah, I think honestly, like this is the kind of stuff that when I was getting started with dev, I would have jumped on in a heartbeat. So I think it being open source is also a pretty cool aspect of it. All right. So hopefully, can everyone see my screen here? Yep. All right.
Yep.
So one of the things that I recently updated is per Kurt's feedback, adding the ability to edit. So you can still edit the JSON blob directly if you want, via the human interface, but also adding a simplified interface for folks. It looks terrible. Hopefully someone with some UI experience will come through and make this a bit prettier. But so for example, uh, if we wanted to add a bit more description to this, and we'll also need to sanitize the data a little bit because it's a little all over the place. Hopefully Kurt or Josh, we can get some scripts to just go through that and standardize it on the OSV format there. But for example, update the description here, something, something. Add or remove different reference links. And then that has the various standard types that the OSV has, as well as if for whatever reason we want to use a different type, we can also manually specify that. .com. And currently it creates an issue, which one, need to work on getting a sandbox going for this, and then two, have it open pull request directly instead of having a issue with the raw JSON. But for example, this automatically updated the references so that now it includes the new example.com as well as any other changes that were included. So next steps for this would be adding the affected version stuff, which I think partially could be based off of the request form that Josh Pressers has, but also we'll probably need a couple of tweaks to support the new stuff like package URLs and that kind of thing. So that is where it's currently at. I guess any questions, comments, thoughts on what to do there?
Oh, well, just minor things like make sure, pre-populate the description so they're changing it, not having to cut and paste it in. And one thing with respect to, is kind of breaking it out a bit, because it's like there's the description and then there's a whole pile of stuff under it. Is that editing the description or is that actually adding, a new URL kind of thing, right? So just UI stuff to break it up visually, make it a bit more parsable, for the human brain.
Yeah, and just a quick comment on the description part. It actually does copy in the existing one. It's just that there is no description on this one because it's using just random fields, summary and details instead of description.
Maybe have it then also display the summary and details, like just, so that it's more obvious, because like the names in that editing field are mapping one-to-one with the thing, so it doesn't actually have a description. The description is blank.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Okay.
we have a lot of the older GSDs, which before the OSV format was actually like being used, we were kind of just doing our own thing there.
Yeah, we should probably update those as well then.
Yeah, I think honestly, rather than trying to scrape the other stuff, which we
Yeah.
can do, I think it'd probably make more sense to just parse the old data into the OSV format.
Yeah, we need to get rid of that GSD format. We
Yeah.
should open an issue for that.
And stupid question, did Josh Pressers, with respect to the 2 and 4 spaces thing, do we want to go basically through all the GSDs from CVE and fix the spacing or not?
Probably not. I don't.
Because then we have to add some logic to, write the files without constantly screwing up the spacing, right?
Well, I don't care about the spacing that much. My bigger complaint is that you had a tendency to send pull requests that messed up the spacing in sections you weren't changing.
Yeah.
And so I think wherever we have JSON, I don't care what it looks like, just don't touch the JSON you're not changing, I guess. And if you do touch JSON, I don't know. This is a bigger conversation that we can discuss today. I'd love to say all the spacing should match, but that's going to turn into the only thing we do if we make that rule. Like it's JSON, whatever. It's not for spacing is for humans.
Do we just want to say a policy then of if a section has, or if basically each file is 2 or 4, please don't change it, make it the same, and we just go with that?
Sure.
Because like detecting if it's 2 or 4 shouldn't be rocket science. Like probably I can even pull that off.
You say that.
Well, no, the problem is just half the time I don't even notice, right? Or like it's just, it slips my mind, right?
This is why humans shouldn't be touching JSON, because humans are terrible at everything.
Yeah.
That's the answer. Anyway, I'm not going to obsess over it. Like if we decide that a hill someone wants to die on, they can write a parser and re-indent everything and have a terrible commit, but whatever.
So yeah, as far as the interface there, like next steps, one, I think the big part is getting in the affected version stuff, and then 2, switching it over to do pull requests instead of opening issues. I think definitely get feedback on like the UI aspects of that. But yeah. And welcome in, Paul. So that is all that I had for the interface next steps. I don't know, Paul, did you catch the dev position stuff?
I did not.
Okay. So just a quick recap there. We're looking to hire a part-time contract position for the GSD to help push forward the code aspect of the project. So,
Nice.
yeah, I'll post the link again in chat. But so, Josh and Kurt, do we want to do the mailing list thing first or the getting started experience?
Yeah, mailing list is great.
So I guess Kurt, I'll let you
Uh,
drive that one.
Okay, why don't we just go from like top to bottom? So actionable data, right? So for example,
Really quick,
Can
do you
share
want
your
to share?
screen or something
yeah,
so we
just
have a
thinking that.
context?
Hang on one second. Nope. So GSD is an actionable data. So traditionally, it had to have a fix or something workaround or whatever. But there's, stuff that's maybe not directly actionable, but you can still do something about it. So perfect example would be, let's say this guy here. This isn't directly actionable, but like, that's kind of really useful to know, and I don't know that this specifically should get a GSD, but for example, I keep seeing things posted around like this that, essentially this in and of itself is not a vulnerability, but I guarantee if you pick 10 random products and shove these strings through them, you're going to find at least one vulnerability, right? So how do we kind of get that chicken and egg problem of maybe getting this into our data set so that people can then use it to find other stuff, right? Or another example would be, what was this one? Oh yeah. So yeah, okay, this is a more classic Python packages dropping a ransomware and fileless crypto miners. CV won't cover it because it's a backdoor. I think it's unlikely that people would grab these accidentally, but again, if we don't put it in GSD, how does somebody easily discover that these two Python packages are evil? If we put stuff like this in GSD consistently, then, the tooling
Hey,
can just,
Kurt, what's the email subject line you're dealing with here?
oh, sorry, it's the GSD is an actionable data.
GSD.
So what it boiled down to in the email is I was thinking one of the more actionable things is needs investigation. Like somebody needs to go take a look at this or, determine if it's real or determine, does this affect a lot of packages or, like, are there more of these? Like a perfect example is you go look at these two packages with their crypto miners and, maybe
Can
search
I
for those
interrupt?
strings and other packages.
I think you've put the cart before the horse, and I think this is more related to the topic I put on about getting started. So let's, like, what is our scope? What do we want to cover in the data set? Let's say you want to make this something we talk about. How is that captured and how is that communicated? If I'm someone new coming in, how would I know that a package like this is something the GSD cares about and is tracking?
See, my thought on that is simply we have a very wide scope and we have some metadata to identify what things are. Like this is a classic vulnerability with, a patch and an exploit, right?
But how do I know that?
Sorry?
How do I know that? I'm
What do you
new.
mean, how do you know it?
I'm new.
So for example, we basically say the scope is wide and here's examples of what we care about. We care about the classic stuff. We also care about backdoors. Like if you find a package with an implanted backdoor or malicious backdoor, we care about that.
Right. I think you're focusing on the details, but like, how do we communicate this to people?
We literally say, here's our scope of coverage.
Where do we say that?
Like on the front page in the tools, like my take on this would be is I'd rather have it in the tools because I think making people go read documentation and then use the tools is stupid. I want them to go to request.gsd.id and have a thing saying, here's what we care about. And if they start entering something, it'll be like, hey, that looks, like a whatever, is there a patch or is there a vendor for it or whatever, right? Like have that guided creation experience. Because that's something I actually wanted to discuss later was like, how do we efficiently turn like tweets into these things, so that somebody can basically plug in a tweet URL and, kind of get a guided experience of, well, whatever, right? And so my take is putting it in the tools, also having it in docs and stuff, but let's not expect people to like pause, go read the docs, come back and use the tool, right?
Well, and so like this is part of the story. Everyone has a different journey, and some people might want to file an issue and run away. Some
Yeah.
people might want to understand the project and what's happening. Some people might want to learn more about what a vulnerability even is, because I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree that vulnerability is not well defined today. It's basically whatever the person talking wants it to be. And so I think that's why I put getting started on the agenda, because this is something I've been thinking about a lot. Is if someone says, I want to get involved with GSD, I'm going to send them to the, what is the global security database.org, but what happens after that?
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty good point too, because for example, I tried to get one of my friends into the project, and they're basically a student in cybersecurity. But when it comes to actually getting started and understanding what is GSD, what is like the CVE and vulnerability landscape, they're totally new to it. So I think
Yeah.
that's one aspect that's definitely missing, is onboarding folks that don't necessarily have a lot of background experience, but are interested to learn.
So that raises a good point, because one of the challenges is if somebody does want to get involved but doesn't know how to get involved, then by definition they don't know how to get involved, right? They don't know enough about this to hit the ground running, right? And one thing I've always been looking at with this is how do we create sort of like gentle on-ramps? So I would say like a less severe on-ramp would be like requesting a vulnerability, but even that is still a pretty high bar. Like, what is a vulnerability? Is this a vulnerability or not, right? Am I going to get castigated if I make a mistake? So a gentler on-ramp would be maybe enriching the data. You know, we have a list of GSDs that are missing things or need clarity or.
Hold on. I'm gonna.
So we
you're
basically
too
kind
far
of.
ahead. You're too far ahead.
Sorry?
You're talking about solutions instead
Well,
of
what I'm
problems.
saying though is basically is we look at what can we offer them that is gentle, that is easier. We can say, look, are you coming at this as a security researcher? Okay, well then you're probably interested in the vulnerability side of things and maybe registering vulnerabilities, you know, or maybe you're just interested in looking at the data, right? Because that's one of the biggest use cases for GSD will be the people that never contribute and just read it. Great, like that's kind of why we're building it, right? So people have a source of data, you know. So some of it could be like what Jerry Gamblin on Twitter is doing, where he's trying to analyze the CV data set, and you know, me and Josh kind of keep telling him like, oh, you know, you're getting there, but like, did you, you know, you're misinterpreting the data in this way because, for example, that Friday 5 p.m. thing doesn't mean what you think it means, right? So, for example, teaching people how to read the GSD data would be useful, I would think, you know. And so we basically look at like what can we provide people? Because like we can't provide one-on-one mentoring, like that's not going to scale, right? So part of it is we have to figure out what solutions can we realistically provide, and then steer people towards those, because there's a lot of solutions that we just can't afford or, you know, realistically do.
Anyway, so here's what I want to talk about. I'm a new person. What happens next? And this is, I think, the challenge this project needs to discuss, because new people today have no way in, right? So let me share my screen for a minute. Is this it? This is what I want to share. I have too much crap, right? Like if we send people here, what are they going to do first? My guess is they won't know. And this is what we do today. And so I feel like we know there are going to be different people that want to come in and help, right? And this, I think, is where the concept of on-ramps Kurt talked about matters. But I don't know, I don't know how we want to approach this. Do we want to define some personas and kind of envision a path from I want to help to what can I do? Do we want to just specify like here is the help we need, where it can be things like filing issues, it can be things like enriching data, it can be I don't even know what else there'd be, but you know what I mean? Like this is what I'm curious about, to get opinions and ideas of others.
My thought on this based on experience is there's sort of three main things. There's the people who want to just read the data and use it. Cool, we want that. There's the people who want to interact with the data, add it, update it, create new ones, you know, enrich it, whatever, cool. And then potentially as a third thing, there's the people who want to be involved in the actual project, building tools and stuff, right? And conveniently
Hold
enough,
on.
those are what we
So
need.
that's personas.
Yeah, but that's also what we need.
So you think we need personas?
Well, I'm not saying we need personas per se, but those are personas and also the three main things that we need to get this project off the ground, right? We need demand. We need people reading it and using it. We need people to understand how to use it properly, right?
Okay, so we need personas. I can agree with that.
Because like my
Yeah,
question
I
for
like,
the rest of you would
use
be,
cases. I think, well, I haven't looked at the MITRE attack getting started.
like my one thought would be like David or Paul or Dean, like what do you guys want or need?
Yeah, just to let you know, I'm your perfect punching bag. Okay, I just want to let you know that right now because I'm a security guy. I'm interested in it. I go high level on some stuff, low level on others, and I just taught a class on MITRE attack, and when students, the first thing that I did was I went, okay, here's getting started. It's already been done for me. I don't have to do it. Personally, I don't like their use cases at MITRE attack, but it got me interested and it made me start digging through this stuff. And that's what made me feel good about it. They gave me some good high level overview stuff. They put it way off to the side, which I thought was wrong to go ahead and drive people into it. But I mean, it's the beginning of MITRE attack. That the layout is the matrix is really sexy, but I think that you guys could go ahead and whip this stuff on me and say, Dean, read this and make sure, because I always try to look at it like like I just woke up kind of thing. But I like their attitude in this, but I didn't like their delivery on it. So that's why I use it as an example, because some of it's really really high level and some of it's really technical stuff. So I don't know if that helps or not.
I'm curious on that, your statement about some of it being high level, some of it being technical and not liking what they've done. What is your view? Like if you're teaching classes?
Okay, what I didn't like, so if you're looking at that site and you scroll down a little bit past getting started, it's real nice and high level. And then they talked about their use cases. I personally still read through all the different use cases, but I did not like where they were going with their use cases. They like the detection and analytics works really well. But my fundamental philosophy is, and this is where they lost me at threat intelligence, adversary emulation, those kinds of things. My fundamental philosophy is different from them. They said you should look at who's attacking you. So advanced persistent threat, who's attacking you, and then start building things around that. And my philosophy is everybody's after me all the time. So therefore you can't even get me to engage with that, but I still was willing to read through their use case and walk through it. And then the people at MITRE have given a bunch of talks. I can't remember the woman's name now, but she's done a bunch of top talks that are up on YouTube, and she talks about those use cases and how to get yourself into that organization and into those use cases and use that for whatever you're doing. I don't know if I'm making sense there or not.
No, I think that makes sense. And it's funny you mentioned that as well, because I feel like now that you say that, I think like MITRE obviously has focused attack on their use case specifically, whereas you're looking more generally, which I guess I never really thought about, but it's completely true. That's funny.
Well, something to keep in mind, right? MITRE is basically an extension of the US government and the DoD. That's like, if you look at their funding model, that's where they get all their money.
Well,
So their
they have
mindset is all
APT.
DoD.
Like
That's
they're
the
better put it,
literally
their
being
welfare.
attacked by like nation states.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like that's, yeah, because we're just going,
MITRE's full of shit.
well,
I agree with this. MITRE doesn't have expertise, so you can say like this is for corporations. I mean, just as a general, like there's great people, amazing people at MITRE, but just as an organization, MITRE saying something carries zero weight with me. I put in chat, I couldn't paste the whole thing because I guess there's a limit. But I guess that's how, when I look at the webpage versus how you talk about it, and at least what I thought was interesting, the difference.
All right, David, can I ask what did you just paste? Did you write that? Or
I wrote that.
Can you paste that? You're welcome to paste it into the meeting agenda, or Like
Oh,
a
yeah,
GitHub
yeah, yeah.
issue or something, because I feel like what you've written, this is really good.
That's a good point with the, yeah, because like Dependabot, I get Dependabot spam and I basically ignore it. And yeah, and that's, I think that comes back to part of it is like focusing a bit more on the demand side, the people reading this and using it and, you know, actually making their lives easier.
Yeah, let me throw a use case at you. Probably you're aware of this, like, because I'm the outsider a bit. But, I work in a monolith that has 65 sub projects that Dependabot's all making noise about. And in a platform space, I need to make an automation that points out which ones we should care about and try to give more feedback, because we always have to do the research, right? And there's gonna be lots of duplicates for us. And having something that's, I don't have to go figure out, does CV even have it? Can I find it? Was it filed correctly? Like, I feel like it's super baseline and it should already exist, and it's kind of hard. And I know there's tools that we probably could pay for that do it, but well, that's another barrier. So reducing the barriers is the point. So it's all about lowering barriers.
So your focus is, you don't want to just fix everything Dependabot sends you, you want to pick out the things that matter?
I only have so many humans,
That's
you know what I
fair.
mean? So I really need to be able to get the most accurate report of information, and Dependabot's doing a fine job of like, doing the work, but it doesn't bridge the gap of the human condition of like, well, we need to do criticals now, and these other ones need to be, be able to be consumed in a way that a PM can put it in a timeline, put it in a project.
Yeah, yep.
Because what'll end up happening in the instead is we'll just ignore an entire major version.
So one question, kind of then, what is the most important data point for you? Is it like the description? Is it the CVSS score?
So Dependabot already does a pretty good job of giving us criticality metrics. So like, I already kind of know that. I need to know the description. I need to know the impacts and risks, because those two pieces are going to tell me if we're doing it now or tomorrow, or, how fast do I need to act here?
When
it's
you
like the
say
best-
impacts and
Yeah.
risks, do you mean like, does this issue affect my application or?
Yeah, it's that Vex thing. Like, do I need to
Okay.
actually do this? And my view is sometimes the descriptions Dependabots give are pretty good. I could almost automate the search of our code base based on the information. Like, here's a great example. In the Rails world, there was a thing with default YAML parsers that is an RCE. That's pretty critical. And that's the default parser. If that had been organized in a manner where there was a section that said this kind of line of code, this regex pattern, kind of like what you put in CodeQL, this is the thing to look for, I could pull that out. I could then provide a list of files for people to review. We could also count the number of files that possibly impacted. Which of our sub projects are actually impacted? Which one of those are critical? Like, it's about us then being able to do our own definition of criticality, not just, hey,
Right.
Dependabot found a thing. And I don't expect GSD to do that. I expect GSD to be the source of the information so I can build those things.
Yeah. So I would think of this as an indicator of compromise, but for vulnerabilities.
Yeah, that's fair.
That makes sense.
Just one note, because I haven't read Dependabot or something. I'm actually scrolling through some of these and they're like, some of them are basically blank.
Some of them are really good though.
Yeah,
And I can definitely say in the Ruby world, I think there's a pattern. They're pretty declarative and descriptive. They're pretty good, but I could definitely see this going one step further, where me being able to identify the risk in an automated way based on, like, when someone's filling out the description, sometimes you actually know the code you're looking for or the type of invocation because it's part of the framework. That's a limited example. Not all of them are going to be like that, of course.
Well, in Ruby will be best because so Dependabot uses the GitHub, the GHSA data,
Mhm.
and GHSA or GitHub pulls the Ruby vulnerability data from the Ruby database, which is actually really like those guys are on the ball. But other things are like just cracked ends of data, and it's terrible.
So, it's a good pattern that we have in Ruby world, but probably this could be the source of better data for the JavaScript world,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is definitely more popular at the moment.
Right, and this is one of the challenges is if I want to update the NPM security vulnerability details, there's nothing I can do, you know?
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And because I'm also kind of interested in CodeQL these days, I think that some place for me to put when I discover how to write the CodeQL for a thing, I think that's a thing that I'm missing in a CodeQL land is,
That's
but that's not
specifically,
necessarily this project.
well, no, that's actually a use case we specifically wanted to support because that's a big thing. Like me and Josh would do tons of research at Red Hat and it would just die in our private folder because there's no way to publicize it or share it, right? And me and Josh Buca, for example, once looked at a CISA advisory, tried to figure out if it was an 8.0 or 8.1 issue. It was poorly written. We looked at the original advice. We spent like an hour talking about it on the phone. We finally came to a consensus and the data sort of lives in our heads and dies there. And so what I would love to do, for example, like if you want to write CodeQL statements for things, yeah, like shove them back into GSD. Absolutely, please. You know, that's exactly what we want because like think about something like Log4j is an extreme example. How many millions of people spent how many hours understanding it and reinventing the wheel poorly, right? All of us. And you know, yeah, if like somebody shoves a CodeQL in early on, oh, okay then. Well, that just saved everybody 1,000 hours. You know, and so no, we this is something I talked about is like how can we make the GSD sort of that notebook for researchers and for operational people to like kind of write down the notes that they can put down publicly and share it because, you know, number one, you're not going to lose it then. And so part of it was like, how can we build that so we're even better than anything you could have internally and make it so you want to share it? And yeah. And maybe the answer there is like having like those integrations, like having somebody write, you know, you want to write CodeQL for these things, go to CodeQL whatever and plug it in, right? I don't know, Josh, Professor, sorry.
Right, so I
Like that
think
notebook
what-
idea.
I think what's coming out of this conversation actually, Kurt and well, everyone, is when GSD started, I think there was an opinion that we were missing a lot of security vulnerabilities. And I still think we are. Like if you search GitHub for buffer overflow, you get like 9 million hits, 9 million issues. Granted, they're not all buffer overflows, but they're we have what 100 and some odd thousand total CVEs ever. So like,
180,000.
yeah, we should probably have millions, but whatever. That's another story. I think that's part two. I think the first problem that I see coming, and I'm seeing this at work all the time too, is just the data we have today is terrible and there's no way to fix it and everyone wants to fix it. And so I think that is the opportunity we have for this project is to give people an avenue to start fixing some of the data, like fixing descriptions, adding analysis, adding CodeQL queries. And like we know how we want to do this with namespaces in the data. So like, I think that's the getting started experience I think we should explore of I'm a researcher looking to enrich data. I'm a consumer looking for better data. I'm an organization looking for CodeQL queries and I'm willing to contribute CodeQL queries. And because I think anyone who knows something, I mean, this was, I think, did we talk about this, Kurt? I forget who I talked about, but like we were saying, if you look at like anytime a human does a thing, what's the first thing they do? They go tell someone else they did a thing.
Yeah, the cave
right?
painting. The cave paintings.
Yeah, right. Cave paintings are my favorite example. Like, you know, the first person to draw a picture on a cave, the second thing they did was go and got their friend to show them the picture they just drew on a cave. Like, and so I think that's the getting started I think we need to focus on. I think there's definitely the argument about missing identifiers, and that's a bigger, weirder problem. But I think more identifiers is not something people want. People want good data. And once they have good data, we can have good tools. And then if we have millions of identifiers, no one's going to care. But if we had millions of identifiers with our current crap data, people are going to jump off cliffs because it's already unbearable and it's not even that many data points. All right, I feel like,
So that actually leads conveniently because I've been looking at a project where basically finding GSDs and CVs that have a very obvious problem. So a good example would be we have a couple of CVs that don't exist in the CV database. Like Sousa has them, and they don't even exist in the CV database as like reserved. Like they just don't, they should not exist at all, for example. Or we have others that are, you know, the descriptions literally are, this is not CVE XYZ, right? There's no vendor name, there's no project name, there's no version name, there's no data in the CVE description at all, right? And I was thinking of looking at building sort of a quasi dashboard of basically like, here's a list of GSDs and CVEs that, like, for the love of God, can you write a description for this thing that at least has the vendor name in it?
So,
You
so
know.
what we need to do there, Kurt, I think, is we've talked in the past about adding tags to vulnerabilities, and I
Mhm.
think we need a tag called like good first issue or needs more data, or because like if I'm a new person and especially if I'm a student, let's say, like, and this is something I'm sure David can relate to totally coming from academia, like there's students who are like hungry and they just want to get their feet wet and jump in and do something and they don't even care what it is. And I think this is where if you can just give them a list of like, here's a bunch of easy things to do, great way to learn. And then we also, like conversely, the other side of this is we need to give them a safe space to do this in, because we also have to make sure if people make mistakes, like you can't attack them viciously, which is very much an attitude from the past of security, where yes, you're going to make mistakes. No, we don't care. It's all in Git, just fix it later. And that like that needs to be the culture of the project.
Do we want to then add as less of a technical step, but more as a political step, sort of a review thing? So essentially, if somebody comes in fresh, makes a mistake, it's not their fault because we reviewed it and said it was okay, and it's our fault. Because I'll happily put my name on all that and take, you know, I'll gladly take the blame for these people because people already are angry at me anyway.
No, it's no one's fault. Like,
Well, no, but I mean
mistakes
from
happen. Fix
external,
it
right? We
later.
basically say like we make it explicit to them that we will stand as a shield for you. We will make sure that you don't get blamed. Like if there's a problem, we'll say like, no, that's our fault. Like let's make it real clear, because I think that might help, because I see on Twitter constantly these people are like, you know, I kind of want to file a CV, but I'm not sure if it's correct or not. But like I got this remote code execution reproducer, so what do you think? And everybody, of course, is like, God, yes, for the love of God, if it's RC and you have a code reproducer, do it. You know, but they're like, they don't want to get, you know, slammed, right?
It's too much work. I feel the same way.
Yeah,
It is.
I
a
don't
lot.
report anything as CVEs because it's too much work.
yeah.
Well,
and-
actually,
and I
actually don't even know how to
you're in
do
a
it.
great position. You have a freaking fuzzer that's like self-aware, and you can't get CVEs for that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Also, when the
So-
machines take over, I guarantee it'll be David's fault. I'm just saying.
Oh
Nice.
yeah, I'm sitting on, you know, a couple hundred packages where we're finding results. Some of them I know like, well, here's an example, a real life example. So we have found an issue in Bluesy, which is used on all the auto manufacturers. So it's on, you know, every major car. So Bluesy ended up fixing this, right? But I had no way actually of telling Toyota or anyone, hey, you're still running this. Like if I go look at your open source, you're still running this, because they wanted me to report to their bug bounty. Now their bug bounty program, I'm like, no, that's giving my IP to you. I read the terms, right? Like it's the safe harbor and I shouldn't need a safe harbor for this. This is open sourced. And so right now I can tell you like personally how to exploit mini autos, but I don't know what to do with the information.
I know how to fix this. You write a talk with the functional exploit. You go to Black Hat, or DEF CON, your choice.
Yes.
You disclose it on stage, and then you open the Git repo with the working exploit for the whole world to use, and it will be fixed in 2 weeks.
That's a lot of work though. I actually just want it to be fixed. I don't need any accolades, but yeah. I hear what you're saying, but it's exactly that, where it's like, my
Right.
job is like, I have 2 full-time jobs. I'm CEO of a startup, you know, and I have to teach this semester.
Oh, you're teaching. How exciting. Are you back in the classroom?
I am. I'm teaching
Nice.
intro to security for PhD students. So I have to go remember a bunch of crypto because
Oh,
it's
how
basically a crypto
exciting.
class.
Just talk about Web 3.0. It'll be fine.
I don't know anything about Web 3.0, but then again, I don't know anything about crypto.
Oh, it's
these
easy.
days.
It's all scams.
Took me a long
Anyway,
time to really
anyway.
understand zero trust. I think I can articulate what it is, but it took me a very long time because
That's
marketing
fine.
Valuable skill these days, because I don't. I feel like zero trust is a bit nebulous still, but
It's whatever.
I mean, the
you
way
want.
I explain it these days is, in the old days, you'd create a firewall, you'd create trust zones, like you'd have your DMZ and you'd have like your internal servers. And essentially what zero trust is you shouldn't have those particular zones of trust. Which is kind of
That makes
stupid because
sense.
you're still going to have your internal network and you're still going to tell every vendor, hey, you know, our stuff isn't open, but yeah.
Trust no one, exactly.
That's right. That's right. All right, we're running out of time. So I guess
Anyway,
here's
I put in my
real
thoughts,
quick-
my thoughts on this. I like your idea of having a call to action, a very simple one, which is, we need volunteers, come verify these reports or come fix these reports, just something stupid that they can do, because you need a way, there's zero call to actions right now on the webpage. There's a lot of like what we do and what's wrong with the state of the world, but nothing about like how you make use of it.
That's a great
Right.
point.
and this is, am I muted? I'm not muted, okay. Right, and this is exactly what was coming up because I sent someone to the website and they were like, what does this even mean? How can I help? I'm like, oh, that's a very good question. How can you help? So, okay, I'd like, we need call to actions. We need personas. Okay, I wanna.
As far as the data enrichment goes, it seems to me like
Hold on, not yet. Don't interrupt. All right, we need to define some personas. We need call to actions. We need use cases.
Yeah, I put it all in my
And-
notes. I mean, you have 3 personas. You have, if you have sources of new vulnerability information, if you wish to report
Oh, nice.
or engage, and then
Perfect.
if you want to consume, right? There's kind of 3 beige personas. And then you can go into like, are these developers or not? But like, these are at least personas by like the problem they're trying to solve.
And I would
This
actually
is
very
lovely.
much split the reporting of vulnerability versus enriching of vulnerability, because one is a blank page, the other one is like, oh, you got a typo there. You know, and so what I put in chat there is I think the biggest thing would be putting a list of data to enrich and correct, because some of it is like really obvious, like there's just no data in the description or, you know, whatever, it's all screwed up. And then having that process to guide and teach them how to enrich and correct that. And then some sort of process to review and publish it so that they're not doing it on their own, because I suspect they'll feel a lot better if somebody else signs off on it and kind of takes the blame if it is wrong.
I'd
Yeah,
also
okay.
say that right now there's no social proof. And this is the problem I have with a lot of these, like OSV.dev. I don't know who's behind it. I don't know who's using it. So why should I trust it? It could just be some random guy.
Well,
And so,
OSP.dev is
yeah,
Google,
for you can
but-
say like
yeah.
supported by Anchor. Like you can be super vague here, or at least have the Anchor logo, or for all secure. I know I would like that because it gives me backlink. This is why I was trying to inquire into joining the organization in the first place. But
And
no one's going to
Well-
use it if they don't know who is part of it.
right, no, I agree. And I mean, in the case of GSD, it's literally the Cloud Security Alliance, like, that's all. And then, now let me ask you that, let's follow up on that though. So the Cloud Security Alliance is behind GSD. Are you looking for even like the next level down, like who are the partner organizations working with the CSA on this, or is just CSA an acceptable definition?
You need more than that. So the typical web page I see, if you look at any landing page, right, there's the business problem, call to action. Underneath that, there's a stream of trusted by, and they'll be, you know, big, but they'll also be mom and shop, because what you're trying to do is when someone lands on that page, you're trying to make sure they think it's for them. And if you just so cloud, you know, Cloud Security Alliance or whatever, they may be like, oh, that's great that they use them, but it's these big corporations. I have no place in this.
And how do you make that approachable, do you think?
Well, I
agree
mean,
with you, but I can't.
my one thought is Josh Bucher, like we have a list of 400 ranging from the biggest to not the biggest companies, and we maybe see which one of them are interested in kind of putting their name to the GSD and actually, you know, maybe just using it. Like we basically tell them, look, we don't want you to contribute, but we just want to get you guys using this so that we can, you know, make sure that we're providing. To put it bluntly, if we can't, if Cloud Security Alliance members can't or won't use this, then who the hell are we building this for, right? Because they should be using this.
I think one thing that we'll need to approach before we do that would be making sure that the data is actually clean and usable. And then also making sure that there's an easy way for folks to actually consume that data. Because right now, like downloading the GitHub repo and parsing it manually is not an acceptable answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that speaks to the confidence scoring and everything, because we can't have all the data be perfect, right? We need to say this data is good, this data is janky, it needs fixing, which conveniently enough fits into the whole, and which data needs enriching and fixing, right?
All right, so here's what I just wrote down, and I don't want to dwell on this because we're almost out of time. I wrote down, we need to be clear about the CSA intent and purpose. I think just for the moment, explaining like this is the CSA, this is why the CSA wants to do this. I think will be sufficient, because I do agree with David that when I go to a project now, the first thing I do is I look at like, where does it live and who's behind it? And in fact, there was one that just someone announced like yesterday, and it's a bunch of Splunk people working on it. They're doing all the commits, but their name isn't on it anywhere. I'm like, what's up, guys? Like, come on, like you're not fooling anyone here. And I think this is the same deal where I think the CSA is a little different because it's a foundation, but also foundations aren't necessarily 100% trusted, because like who's running the foundation? Like nobody knows.
Well, the foundation, I mean, yeah. I think that you can say it's used by that. I think other places for social proof is Josh, Kurt, you have great brand name saying like, these are on the steering committee. I don't see that anywhere on the front. Like all these things establish credibility. And that if I go, for example, to this other website, osv.dev, maybe it's big, maybe it's bad. I don't know. I don't follow these things.
It's Google, like OSP.dev is Google. And they
You
clearly
can say
don't want
vendor
to.
neutral, and then you can actually list on the webpage, like, you know, our partners are OSV, a Google effort, or something, like you can call them out. But this is, oh yeah, it is. Yeah. Man, Google, I think doesn't realize that they're not necessarily always doing good things.
Yeah.
Just
no, I
a
mean,
quick
they're doing
reminder,
what
this is
Google-
recorded.
Just, I mean, one thing to remember, it's not that Google is good or bad. It's just, my favorite quote is always like the semi-trucker, you know, like, I didn't want to run over the scooter, but you know, like I would have had to change lanes if I didn't run over him, right? And so Google isn't like evil. It's just Google's doing what Google needs to do. And unfortunately, Google, I think sometimes forgets there's like only one Google, and there's kind of a few companies as big as them, like Apple and Amazon, but fundamentally there's only one Google. And so I think they forget that the rest of the world's kind of like, we don't want or need what you're doing. You know, and that's part of the challenge with the DSD, right? Is I know where me and Josh Bressers come from, but looking at newer devs like Josh Bucher, you know, they raise things where I'm like, that's so what? Why do you not care about this old stuff? Oh, it's because you don't care about this old stuff. Like that's history to you. You know, it's no longer meaningful.
So
right.
I guess that's my thought. I mean, there's a lot of noise here. So there's this good question that you're asking, which is how to also rise above the noise, because everyone, I just started this conversation saying like, I don't actually understand the difference between ostif.org, sos.dev, osv. Like why it seems like a marketing campaign to me at this point. osv.dev, where basically Google is just creating a lot of fake domain names to get, you know,
I think
I mean, they're not obviously because they're Google. They can just change their own search rank, but
Anyway, let's move on before we all find ourselves in trouble. All right, so we got 5 minutes. I'm looking at this agenda. I put some things in bold that I think are some of the to-dos. I really like the personas down at the bottom. I'm going to bold those as well, that David created. And I think we can take a lot of what David put here and capture it in the website. But I guess this is the next step, right? Is we need to take this data, turn it into something usable, and then we need to, I think, also just start writing some of this down. Like we talked about tags. We don't need tags. We just need to write this stuff down. And I know Kurt, Josh, and I will do some of this. I'll create issues for all of these at some point in the near future. But does anyone else here have any interest in helping? You don't have to help. Like I'm not trying to pin anyone down. And we'll put a call out to the mailing list as well, I think. But I feel like that's step one now. Is just like we need to fix the site. So if a new person comes to it, they at least know what's going on.
And again, you can use me, make me read it like 10 times in a row because I'm your perfect person for that. I'm
Awesome.
all in about just like looking at it and saying I hate it, and I'm still gonna read it.
That's perfect. Are you on the mailing list, Dean?
I I think I am. I'll,
'Cause I don't
I'll
know if
put
I
my
have your
email in the
email
chat.
address.
I think, so another part of social proof here, just going on that, is who are you aggregating? You're aggregating MITRE CDE feed, who else?
those are the big ones right now, is the NVD and the MITRE data. And I think I'm okay with that for the moment. There's like, we'll probably pull in GitHub at some point. We've discussed it. We just need to kind of do it. But the intent, I think, for the moment is just to help with CVE data.
So can I just be very blunt on why For All Secure wouldn't submit data?
Yeah,
It wouldn't help us from a business point of view. You know, when I reached out to the Cloud Alliance, they're like, hey, you can sponsor the Cloud Alliance and give us money, and then we'll put your logo. But if I told an engineer, you know, you spend the next month and make sure you're, you know, cleaning up data and getting it to them, I wouldn't be able to say what the ROI is.
I agree with that. I think that's,
So if you could
but
solve
so
that, just like, you know, For
you
All
just threw a
Secure is
bomb,
providing
David.
data, we would be
so
great.
so here's the deal. There's no ROI in anyone fixing this data, because if there was, they would have fixed it by now. Right? This is I feel like this is one of those open source black hole projects where there are people doing work. Like here's a better way to think of it.
Mhm.
Don't think of it as sending an engineer to fix data. Think of it as, we just did a bunch of work. We have this data we would like to give to the world. You can't do that today. And so I don't expect any organization to be submitting like vast quantities of data on a regular basis here. I view this more as, I am an engineer person. I've collected some interesting data that I want to put somewhere others can benefit from my work. And there is no ROI. There's no return for, even the people doing the work will get no credit for it. And that's going to be one of the challenges, is how do we make this sustainable in the long term? And to date, no one has managed to do that. Because if you look at the MITRE data, like these are people literally being paid to do this, and it's garbage. If you
Yep.
take payout, it's going to be even worse potentially. I'm hopeful now. I want to think of it more like open source projects can do amazing things with nothing, but you are correct, and I don't have a good answer for that.
Open source projects will acknowledge people who put in work, and GSD is not.
I think that is something that you're right, we need to add in there, is folks that contribute to the project, recognizing, hey, they actually did something.
Right. It doesn't have to be money. I'm not asking for money. My ROI can be, I have improved page rank. I have a better
Mhm.
domain authority because I have a backlink from a .org.
And
That's one thing I was
Stuff
thinking.
like this is actually reasons that we do stuff in the company. And I spent a crap load on marketing, 150K a month on Google Ads, I think is what I saw.
I mean, Josh and Kurt, would there be any issue with adding something like that to the README for the project?
Well, and
'Cause-
also what I was thinking was like, when you're looking at a GSD entry, having like Bob wrote this, and here, like Bob gets to pick the link that his thing, like we give Bob credit for writing that line of description or whatever, and Bob gets to choose if he links it to, you know, Microsoft.com or foo.com or whatever, his startup, his personal page, whatever, right? Things like that. Like I'm
close.
fundamentally okay with that. And then
It doesn't quite solve the problem that I'm addressing, which is Google doesn't index the content of GitHub repos.
Yeah.
So while someone
and then-
eventually may see it on a UI, the linkability part is actually important.
Yeah, well, and then what I was also thinking longer term, because we have it in Git, we have the data, but like long term, I would like to see a thing like a leaderboard, because like you look at, like Microsoft has their leaderboard for security researchers, like leaderboards work. Right, every GitHub project, what do they have in the corner there? The
All right,
leaderboard
all
of
right,
who
Kurt,
committed
I'm going to
stuff.
stop you because we're out of time.
Yeah.
But this is, I think, a huge question, and we should address this in the future, because we obviously. But I guess we can take comfort in it's step 2, right? Step 1 has to be fixing all the getting started stuff. But then I think it's why am I going to help is a really good question. But yeah, we should all go. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.